Thanks for listening to the Drummers Weekly Groovecast. You can contact the show at twitter.com/DW Groovecast and through Facebook at facebook.com/Drummers Weekly Groovecast.
Good evening.
I am warning you right now, if you touch my drums, I will stab you in the neck with a knife.
Ain't a funky. Ain't a funky.
Mom!
Take it easy. Lower it.
I'm not gonna lower it. I have to do this now.
I don't mind you playing it, but lower it.
Everything get straightened out?
No, we had a problem. I mean, we tried to do everything we could.
What do you mean?
Well, you know what I mean.
Next.
Little trouble there. You're rushing.
Yeah, well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.
Yeah.
John, I'm just happy to be here today.
Good. I'm happy to be here too.
I had to fight traffic just to make a day happen, man.
Man, but you're like just trying to be like the LA drummers, like you and Ryan can commiserate on traffic. Is that what's up? It is sucking lately, man.
I don't know what's in the water, man. You know, I'm trying to get over here to podcast with my buddy, and then I get over here, I'm just trying to make my freaking mind work, man.
I kind of giggle when you have to come over this way. And then I am reminded when I come to your house how miserable it is. But I always think, like, at what point is it Spaghetti Junction? Is it Jimmy Carter? Where you're like, why didn't I think about someone over in my neck of the woods to do this stupid podcast with?
Well, let me tell you, the segue you used, or you mentioned Ryan Brown.
Yes, sir.
Ryan, the check is in the mail. That's all I'm gonna say.
It has been amazing. The response is above and beyond anything we'd hoped for, and it's just the amazing added bonus of how great of a guy he was, and his enthusiasm and his just humble attitude makes it even all the more cool.
He's a real cat, man.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, this guy did not pull any punches about what it's really like to be a working musician in Los Angeles. I mean, you know, every time we read an interview or hear an interview with somebody that's in a high profile gig, you think that's all they ever do, right? Is a high profile gig. And man, I mean, this guy, man, he tells you exactly the way it is. So major kudos to Ryan Brown. And also, let me go ahead and say this.
Yeah.
Man, the Legion of Zappa fans, wow.
Thank you for checking it out, man. You have no idea the numbers and the amount of attention that interview brought. One thing I want to say about Ryan too is, you know, LA, man, it's the land of getting over on people. Like, let me put my best face, boobs, and nose job forward, and you just let people believe
John.
what they think they need to believe.
Yeah, I know.
And it's like, he was just like, oh man, I go do a corporate gig when I get home and all that. There's a lot of guys that just kind of are a sort of quote unquote above that, you know, like I'm not going to admit I go home and do that. I'm a rock star or whatever. And that's just, it's reality. And man, it's painting a clear and honest picture, which is what we want to do too. So perfect serendipity in that sense.
Man, one other guy, it made me think of a story that this guy told me. I guess it was probably 15 years ago, that kind of lends itself to that. And you folks have heard me mention this guy's name before, but I was talking with Kenny Washington one time. I had the good fortune, it's a long story that I will not get into the nuts and bolts of it, but I actually had his infamous cymbals for a few weeks.
I remember that.
You remember that?
Yeah.
And there was this one cymbal that he had that there was this big old ding in the edge of it. And I'm like, Kenny, what happened, man? How'd that big ding get in the edge of that cymbal? And he was like, oh man, I was playing a wedding reception. I had a big plate of food, and I was eating dinner and watched this chick get her foot caught in my cymbal stand and just pulled it over and put a big ding in the side of it. From that moment on, I've loved Kenny Washington.
He's just telling it like it is.
Wedding reception, man. This guy's been on like 500 great jazz albums.
We got to do what we got to do.
I'm telling you, man. So, hey, speaking of doing what we got to do,
Mm-hmm.
got to tell these folks they need to get in touch with us, right?
Oh,
Stay
that,
in touch.
yeah. You should just pre-record it, man.
You remember a couple weeks ago you were saying something about that I need to be like this. I'm going to be this emotionless kind of person. So I should just record this thing with like no emotion whatsoever, just robotic.
All right, I can be the guy that flies off the handle.
There you go.
Cusses out anyone and anything.
But folks,
let's do it.
Oh, yeah. Always, we love hearing from you. Reach out to us. You can get us on Facebook, and that includes you Zappa folks. You guys are vocal. We love it. You can reach us at our Facebook page, facebook.com/Drummers Weekly Groovecast. You can tweet us, twitter.com/DW Groovecast. Notice it's the little short at DW Groovecast. Twitter won't let us use the full name. And it's nice to get angry about free stuff, isn't it?
Stifling bastards.
It's just unbelievable. And then always you can email us at our traditional account, drummersweeklygroovecast@gmail.com. There, I said it. It's out of the way. Whew. Yeah. So, John, this week you and I had talked about the topic, and we settled on musical mentors. Yes,
a topic that on a lot of levels means a lot to me, and I certainly know the same for you.
Dude, if this thing's approached the right way, man, I'm going to be a blubbering mess.
Just suck it up.
An emotional train wreck.
Come on, man. Come on.
This would be a good time to do one of those Ryan Brown things. Just do that whole thing where we play 30 quick questions to,
I want to play that game.
You want to play that?
Well, you've had that in your back pocket all this time, like denying me because I want to talk about myself. Come on.
I want to eventually. I'm going to go ahead and throw it out on the table and tell all the listeners. I eventually want to interview Jack DeJohnette and make him do that.
I liked it, man. You
like that?
Call me a cornball or whatever. I thought that was awesome. I think Ryan dug it too. You could tell he's like.
He did, man.
That's awesome.
Especially when I made him talk about In-N-Out Burger.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I think we've probably killed enough time talk about that, but we'll go ahead and talk about the musical mentor stuff. So we're going to approach it from a bunch of different aspects or from a bunch of different angles. But I thought what we could do is first wax poetic with a few definitions from our favorite dictionaries on exactly what is a mentor, John.
All right.
And the good folks at dictionary.com are short and sweet, and they say that it's a wise and trusted counselor or teacher. That's
I can take that.
Straight to the point.
Yeah.
Then if you, I suppose, want to take it the next step up to the good old Webster's Dictionary, they say that it's someone who teaches or gives help and advice to a less experienced and often younger person. I dig it.
Yeah, man. Those are both really frame it pretty well.
Yeah.
And the beauty of a mentor is, I think more than anything, what's often forgotten is, they're giving back, and that a lot of times that means a lot, as much to a mentor as it does a student or their subject, and so it's something that touches a lot of us, most of us, and I just think about mine and how broad the influence was. It wasn't just about playing, or it wasn't just about, professionalism. There's a lot. It goes a lot deeper than that, and a true and dedicated mentor is something that I think we all can be pretty passionate about.
Oh, I completely agree. And in a business that is as tough as the one that we're in, having somebody, especially when you're a younger up and coming player, it's invaluable. And I don't necessarily know that I knew that quite as much when I was actually at that age as I am now as I've gotten older, because I mean, I'm going to just lay it right out on the table. I probably would not be doing this for a living right now if I hadn't had the guy that came into my life, you know, when I was a late teenager, when I was 18 or 19, you know.
Yeah, I could certainly say the same.
Yeah.
It's definitely a thing that in our younger years too, you know, we're so guilty of knowing it all and that. And the thing I love about mentors is it really ties into that whole, man, if I knew them what I know now, whole kind of thing. And it really makes me look back to the people who influenced me positive in that mentorship role and just appreciate them even more. And, you know, I've shared stories with many people about that, those individuals. And I just, more than anything, man, the gratefulness I have for it is beyond measure. And I think this subject, I feel really strongly about, just in that it just shaped my life, and I certainly know yours as well. And we can get into some of that, you know, what it really is and the impact. And then I think also how we maybe need to grow into that ourselves.
That is an interesting point, man, is that I think that once you have realized that you were mentored by somebody and it had that kind of effect on you, it almost becomes a natural progression that somewhere down the road you will pass that along to someone else as well. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing is I think, to kind of call back to what I was talking about a few minutes ago, sometimes the mentee, you know, the person who's being mentored, doesn't necessarily know it. And I think it could also be said sometimes the person who's mentoring doesn't necessarily know it at certain times either. And that's certainly the case for one of the mentors that I'm going to talk about. Mm-hmm. I think, you know, when we get to that part of the podcast. But this is a good time to say, I'm going to paraphrase one of our great musicians, John. I'm going to paraphrase Herbie Hancock. Because he was certainly very aware of mentors and the importance of it, because he obviously had one with Miles Davis, and he has been a mentor for many others. To paraphrase Herbie Hancock, he says that music is an apprenticeship, and it is so important that when we are reaching with one hand for the highest heights, that our other hand is reaching down below us to help the next guy up. And so I think that's an important thing to know, you know, or important thing to kind of share with people, that, I mean, even the greatest of greats, you know, feel that same way about the importance of this.
Yeah, man, as well they should. And I think if you don't, then there's a character flaw, in my opinion, because there is no one with any amount of success that we know or are aware of or that we've looked up to that didn't have that. I feel so strong about that, you could never convince me otherwise. And for someone to abandon not only the acknowledging someone who was a mentor, but then in turn, you know, not take on that role, you're doing a disservice to the art that, you know, whatever it is we're creating in the musical growth of others, you know, it's just something that I feel strongly about, should be by all means embraced. And the other thing, I was thinking about this last night, mentorship. Sometimes we think about the long-term influence of a teacher or a guy we gigged with that was a little bit older and really showed us the ropes and all that. But man, sometimes I've had a couple instances where a great mentor might have been in passing and said one thing that impacted me beyond measure. So, you know, the wise old sage with the pipe and the advice, you know, that's certainly a valid interpretation of mentorship, but it can go above and beyond that. And I just, it made me think about a couple people that influenced me.
Sure. And I think that's a good point to make, that we're going to kind of cover several different types of mentors and mentorships today. And one thing that's kind of important to notice, or it's important to know, is that all of these different types of mentorships that we're going to talk about, they do retain a lot of the same characteristics, but there are some very different ones, or very different characteristics inside of each one of them. So what I would like to do is go ahead and talk about a few of the different kinds of mentors, and then go back and kind of address each one, you know? And so the first one is an educational mentor or a teaching mentor, a lot of times like a private teacher. And then another kind of mentor would be like a co-worker, or perhaps, you know, a boss on a gig or in a band that you're in, like a gigging mentor.
Or it could be someone you look up to, you work with regularly even.
Absolutely.
Doesn't have to be necessarily a position of authority even.
Right.
Yeah.
And then another one is like a recorded mentor, or like almost, as you said, like a kind of a mentor from afar, or maybe someone that you just had a brief relationship with, you know, because it's very possible you can kind of mold your career, or at least your career path, over someone that you don't even know, and they don't even know that, you know, they are mentoring you in that sort of way. That's
true.
So again, a lot of the things that we're going to talk about, or a lot of these different positions that we're going to talk about, all share a lot of the same characteristics and a lot of the same traits. But we'll go back now and talk about like teachers. And I think that's probably the most obvious one out of the bunch.
Oh, I would say, yeah, the impact is probably far more significant with that than just about any other.
Oh, it certainly was for me, for sure. And I'm gonna, when we get close to wrapping this up, I'm gonna give like a very graphic, detailed story as far as like that kind of culminates and sums up, you know, what this person is, what it meant to me, you know.
That movie was about you, wasn't it?
The Mentor.
The what was that movie where that guy just was getting yelled at all the time?
Iron Man.
No.
Officer and a Gentleman.
It's
Officer
a
and
drummer.
A Gentleman.
The drummer's getting yelled at by the teacher.
Mustache. Whipstache.
You're really pissing me off.
Man, let me tell you, you don't want to know what my wife had to say about me during that movie. I was not real happy with it, but I do like J.K. Simmons a lot, though.
Oh, he's amazing. Yeah. If you kind of like hate someone in a role, they're acting their butt off typically.
That's a good point. Then that means I really like the drummer then. He's my mentor for how to play up tempos.
Yeah.
So anyway,
how to punch a snare drum.
Weren't we talking about teachers?
Yeah, that.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So the most obvious mentor, like we talked about before, would be like a teacher, like an applied teacher. And some of the traits that they might have is they can basically be a role model for you from the standpoint of how you would eventually want to become a teacher. Because let's face it, if we teach, what do we teach? We teach the stuff that we know, the stuff that we've been taught.
Right, the influence.
Yeah.
Yep.
So naturally, if you have a positive experience with that, in other words, if these people spoke to you, this teacher spoke to you, then it's going to naturally influence the way that you're going to teach in the future.
True.
Another very, very important aspect of it, and you've already alluded to it, is that this mentor will be a character example. And let me tell you, if I've said this once, I've said it 100 times, is that the guy that was my mentor, man, he taught me as much about being a man as he taught me about playing music.
Amen. I share the same experience. I can't say I was inspired to teach by my teacher, but man, you talk about pride in your work and professionalism and preparedness and punctuality and all those things that help us to succeed. That I'm just tenfold for every one the influence that I had that way, and that really clearly ties into being a man as well. I think, like, be responsible and meet your obligations and give 100%. And in my eyes, that's what a real man does. So,
yeah, and it's the type thing that I think as a student, when you see that the mentor or the teacher that's doing this, man, that's just their. You can tell through their integrity that that's just the way that they live their life. They're not putting on an air, for you.
And I think people see through that if they are. And
Sure.
Therefore, the majority of people that are hugely influential, especially from a teacher standpoint, that authenticity is why most of them see a great deal of success. They're having people follow them because those people are not seeing through them.
Yeah.
They're seeing authentic and truly honest depiction of who they are, and in turn you want to follow that, which is just amazing. And that guy, in my case, this is someone that had success for 30 years, like ridiculous amounts of success for 30 years. Well, you're not a person of character, and as a leader, that's how it happens, I think.
Yeah.
There's not some magic formula he had for teaching some Yahoo kids how to play jazz. It was way beyond that. And I can't be thankful enough for it, but as a mentor, those things are probably a large part of their success as a mentor, if you will.
It's the intangibles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's these little intangibles because, you and I know plenty of teachers, and we know plenty of people who have studied with plenty of teachers that teach similar, if not the same stuff, right? You come out and you're a decent player, but the way the stuff is packaged and the way that it's presented, that intangible, and I mean not just the intangible of how the person teaches, but I mean their motive, the way that they can inspire you with that, the way that they speak to you, the belief that they have in you, all of that stuff comes from this character that they have, and it's much like you said. I mean, that's a thing that just as humans, we can detect sincerity, and that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And that was instrumental with the guy that was my mentor. I could tell that he believed in me, that he cared about me and what I was doing, and he knew that it was reciprocal coming back to him. Mm-hmm. That I would, man, I busted my butt, man, working on that stuff and doing the best that I could not to let him down, because this guy, like I said, I could just tell that he had my best interest at heart, and that he was walking the walk and talking the talk. He was doing what needed to be done, and he was just a great guy. He's a great person.
It's awesome. I love that. I'll tell you, one thing that sometimes, another thing that we might overlook in scenarios like that is, in turn, what you give. Like, I know in my situation in high school, this legendary program, as a freshman, I was completely overwhelmed. But there were guys who kind of took me under their wing and accepted me and all that. And coupled with his just gracious mentoring and his ability to motivate and all that. As I got older, my later years in high school, I became a mentor and an influence on younger guys too. Well, what model did I have?
There you go.
About as good as you get. And to this day, I have people that I quote unquote taught. I mean, right, whatever. Young drummers, middle school, whatever. I was in high school. I'd give them lessons.
Yeah.
But to this day, they're like, they'll say things like, they don't remember anything we talked about drumming wise, Haskell Har or realistic rock, or they remember, man, I just remember you being real cool, man. Like you weren't a jerk, and you said something I played was good. You know, that's what I remember, and I remember like, including me in something as opposed to being above it, and you think about that character and that thing, that was all influenced by an amazing teacher who instilled that in us. So it's far reaching, which is amazing when I look at the big picture.
Oh, it absolutely is, because
fascinating.
Again, you get a little bit older and you realize what these people meant to you, and then you realize as well that, hey, if I can pass this along, if I can provide this kind of guidance to someone else, I mean, that to me is just as fulfilling as playing, great gigs.
Oh,
doing that type thing. I mean,
I can appreciate that.
It's no secret. I mean, people who listen to the show know that I love teaching. I do. When I've got good responsive students that are there for the right reasons, man, I love it. I love doing it, and I get a lot out of it.
That's fantastic, man. You definitely have that another passion connected to drumming that is something that's going to resonate with people for a long time and influence people for a long time, and hopefully help them be successful in doing what they dream of doing. And I love that for you.
I appreciate you, John. Checks in the mail.
Well, I mean, don't get too excited. I'm not going to ask you for lessons or anything. I don't believe in you that much. You couldn't fix this train wreck on your best day.
I'm going to make a promise to the listeners that starting next podcast, we're going to start out every show with a 15-minute practice pad warm-up. That's what we're going to do. We're going to go through all the rudiments, me and John. We're going to do the Dawson ritual.
Think about the inspiration that I'll give people when they hear my lame attempt at a double stroke roll. They'll just be like, oh my, how could I not make it? This loser has made a living for 30 years. I mean, we're going to be inspiring beyond even our greatest mentors if we do this. I think this idea is fantastic.
John, that's a different kind of mentorship, man. I think you've just invented something like on the moment here.
Let me selfishly show you my shortcomings and how you shouldn't let them negatively influence your dreams.
And if you believe that load of crap.
I mean, there's a little bit of truth to it. Come on.
John can play, y'all. It's between me and you. John, let me tell a little story about my mentor. And just, really, it kind of puts everything just really in perspective, You've heard me mention before that, if you're gonna take lessons from somebody that, if they dress you down from time to time, or are really critical on you, they need to be the person that in turn builds you back up, right? Mm-hmm. That's very, very important. In other words, that whole one-sided thing of people yelling and screaming, and that's no good. You got to be the person that if you're going to be critical, you got to help also on the other end of thing. And I can say that that's absolutely the case, that anytime this guy was ever critical with me, he was right there on the other side of it as well. And that's part of this story here. When I was probably a junior, maybe a senior in undergraduate school. I was part of a large ensemble that used to go out and do like recruitment tours, and we would do fundraising gigs, and we were doing a fundraising gig at this time because we were trying to raise money to send this huge group to the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland. That's what we were trying to do. And this gig that we were doing was double booked over a theater gig that I was doing at that time. All right. And me being the selfish, like 20 or 21-year-old kid at that time, I wasn't about to give up no paying gig to go play a fundraiser, right? Well, I was rudely reminded by the gentleman who was the conductor or the leader, the professor of that ensemble that I was on. He was like, I want you to realize that you're a scholarship player, and if you enjoy your scholarship, you will be playing this fundraising gig. Right? So you see where this is going, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, I had been a part of this theater production for weeks at a time. And, like I said, it was a paying gig. So naturally, I go to my trusted advisor. Hey, I got a problem here, and I need some help with this whole thing. And the short story, or the short answer to this long story, I should say, is that this guy bailed me out, and he played my theater gig for free.
This was your
mentor.
Wow.
He did the theater gig for free, and I went and played the fundraiser.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's in a nutshell of what mentorship is about.
Yeah, man. We try to make it such a cut and dry, easy to digest definition, but anyone we talk to would have stories that have a thread of common things, but differ drastically in that sense, but teaches you some valuable lessons. There's one that that story touches me, man. Just like, wow, what a great gesture.
I'll never forget it, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll never forget it. I mean, I was, looking back at it, I mean, as an adult now, I mean, the choice is obvious, but it wasn't then at that time for somebody who's 21 years old, that kind of thing.
Not even capable of comprehending that.
And I mean, this guy just basically said, I'm taking this off your plate. You go do this, and it's going to be fine. And naturally, he smoked my gig better than I could have played it. So,
as I always prefer.
Absolutely.
I never understood that mindset. Like, man, I want to get someone who sucks.
Protect my gig.
It's like, dude, if you're not that secure in your gig, you might want to rethink the whole thing.
Sounds like another podcast topic.
Could be. I've had some, you'd be surprised, like a couple people that shockingly adopted that mindset.
Subscribe to that flawed theory, huh?
It's like, whoa. No, I want to be able to take time off again. So give me someone who can kill it.
I know.
So that leader's like, yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well,
another day.
Yeah. John, we mentioned before that another type of mentor would be like a gigging mentor, not necessarily a teacher, could be like a coworker, could be a band leader. I know you said you've had a little bit of success finding such and becoming such.
Yeah, man. I look back on a couple long-term gigs I had where there was someone that always, just kind of had it right when I look back and think about it, just simple things like showing up on time, treating people with respect, how they dealt with clients or bar owners and all that stuff. And it's not by accident they remain successful,
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about the couple people I think about like that is they weren't taking on this John, let me show you how it's done role. It was just who they were and the influence they had by just being that solid individual with a professional attitude and a calm demeanor and all of those things. I mean, that's as valid as the hands-on day-to-day teacher.
It's lead by example.
Yeah. So that's something that I look back on and think like, man, I could have been in a wholly different situation. I mean, we came up at a time when you could go down the wrong path real easy any given night of the week, and having some people that just sort of were not into that and fortunately were in my life made a big difference, man.
The first real kind of gigging mentor that I had that really showed me the way this is how you conduct business is probably about 20 years ago, when he asked me to do some fairly extensive road work, some international road work.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been on the road before prior to that, but I mean, it was, quite honestly, it was like getting by the skin of your teeth, I mean, staying at flop houses and, just not very good road experiences. The old saying where you're paying your dues, right?
Yeah.
Well, when this guy took me on the road, he showed me that there's a whole different way of conducting business on the road, from the standpoint of like, this is how you talk to booking agents. This is how you conduct business with clients, and this is how you negotiate for, proper hotels. This is how we deal with proper flights, proper ground transportation, everything all the way down to when you get to the venue. This is how we're going to conduct a sound check and or rehearsal.
How we're going to treat people. This is how when the rider's not fulfilled for the green room, this is how we talk. This is how we talk to the booking agent. This food's not here. We need to try to get this before we play. That kind of thing. Mm-hmm.
All the way down to how you got paid. In other words, this is how we're getting paid. This is how it's going to happen. He never came back with any excuses. That the money's a little light, guys. Sorry. It was always what he said it was going to be. It was always on time. So I learned a lot about that from him. And then a little bit later on, I learned a whole different style of business that had to do with embracing sort of the technological age, so to speak. Prior to the late 90s and early 2000s, when you did rehearsals and when you conducted business, things were done, over the phone. And, when you had to get rehearsal materials, things were done by delivering tapes. And, if there were any charts, they were like, physical charts that were handed out. But in the early 2000s, I learned a whole different set of business skills, so to speak, with, how to conduct business online, how to do things properly online with, emailing charts and staying organized with like Dropbox and other kind of FTP sites for housing different MP3s and audio files and video files and things like that to kind of modernize the way we do business and how to do business in that way. So I've had a couple of really strong, we'll call them business style mentors that showed me how to take care of that type of thing.
Get in a political argument with the band leader the night before, that kind of thing.
Yeah, but I'm always right.
Yeah.
So it's not an argument.
I stand corrected.
That leads into being able to communicate effectively.
I mean, I guess you could call that effectively.
The way that I like to communicate effectively is I like to just get all over Facebook and just smear people.
Especially other drummers.
Especially other drummers.
Then you'll be the one.
Yeah. Or make wide sweeping political posts. That always, kind of ingratiates you to the music community.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. As a matter of fact,
John's posting right now. John, have you ever thought about us doing one of those Facebook Live things where we just hold the phone up and just show everybody what we're doing?
No. Not particularly.
Well,
I
you at least thought about it.
It's not a bad idea. It's just sort of like, I have to admit, whenever someone does it, for some reason I can't hide it on my Facebook. And so anytime anyone posts something live, I'm like notified, and then you got to like click it out. I'm like, I don't want to be that.
I made the mistake of seeing that one time and then clicking on it to where I could like watch it for a few minutes, and then there's a weird anomaly that happens, is that the person who's actually broadcasting can see that you're watching
Hey
them.
Phil, how's it going, man?
Exactly. And then you feel obliged that you have to stay on there for a little while, because if you immediately click out of it, then they think, well, that guy.
That's one thing that my mentor never taught me.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that your mentor never clicked off of your Facebook Live.
No,
podcast.
he never taught me to be polite and stay on it. I just bail. And I kind of thank him for that. See, once again, in my mind, a positive influence. You know, you can watch those things later, and you're not going to be called out. That helps.
There's your tip of the day. I thought we were going to get to that later, but that's a little freebie for everybody. Right?
Yeah. I've had a love-hate relationship with Facebook lately. I'm sure I'm the only one in the world for the last year that feels that way. But
like I said before, I'm just happy to start getting back to the point to where I can see what people have for lunch.
That's a bunch of crap, man. Everybody's like, I can't wait for November 9th. Why? Because it'll be worse as it's proven to be? All right, let's move on. I'm going to be a mentor and say, Phil, we're changing the subject.
What would you like to talk about, John?
How about musical mentors?
Well, I think we've at least given people a taste about the business mentor, right?
Yeah, man. There's a lot of great people out there doing a lot of good things and conducting themselves right. And I encourage you, especially young guys, follow in those footsteps, man. Being a cranky malcontent that's showing up late and being a jerk and being unprepared, man, there's plenty of those guys out there. Rise above.
Absolutely.
Let that mentor who's got it together be your guiding light.
Well, then, as we talked about before, learn and pass it on. You be the next guy that conducts business the way that it should be done.
I love it.
It's not always easy, you know.
No.
Sometimes you have to do the really tough stuff. You have to hold people accountable.
Sure. And, you know, I don't mind that. I really like, you were talking about how you love teaching, and, you know, as I've gotten older, I have a few people that I kind of feel like I mentor on some level. It's not by any means a regular occurrence, but there's an open door. It could be a question from anything about gear to gigs to approaching a song, and sometimes we'll get into some other cool stuff like I've mentioned in the past, like, man, go to the dentist, 22-year-old. Do it once a year. It'll cost you $75.
What dentist is he going to?
You will be... Okay, well, that tells you how often I go to the dentist. But you'll be glad you did it.
Yeah.
Because I might be off on my figures as far as the current cost of dental care, but I'm not off on the end result of neglect.
What do you mean it costs $325? My mentor said it's $75.
Yeah, well... I also told him there's plenty of vaudeville gigs still available, so that gives you an idea of how out of touch I am.
Let me bring my traps into the pit.
I play 20-inch ride cymbals. What do I know? I'm an idiot who's locked in the past.
Dude, my hats are bigger than that.
You're so cool, man.
Tell it to the folks.
I'm telling you, you know why you're so cool? Because you're in touch with the young kids.
I'm a mentor.
You're a mentor.
Let's talk about the unassuming mentor. I like to call him maybe even the recorded mentor.
Oh, man.
I can tell you about a story about one of mine, man, that
I wanted to be mine in every way, shape, and form.
Who was it?
Jeff Porcaro.
Oh, that's a good one, man.
In high school, man, I had boots, round, clear glasses, a vest.
Yeah, but the boots and the vest, that's actually Jim Keltner, man.
Of course it is, but I didn't know that. That's not important.
Your mentor didn't tell you to do research?
I didn't talk to him. We just talked about the...
That's a good point.
You can't change the rules mid-course here. Come on.
My mentor was Pat Metheny.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting, isn't it? I
mean, I hope not in
hairstyle.
Yeah.
I said it. Ha! Plus, I'll tell you, man, look at some of those pictures from like the early 80s, those tennis shorts he was wearing. Come on, man.
Yeah, but see, that wasn't even, Woo. It wasn't, no one thought anything of it.
Yeah, I did.
He did?
Yeah.
He was shorter. I mean, longer.
Yeah.
Pat. That's pretty
that
awesome.
Pat Metheny thing. Well, let me tell you, I came about it honestly because, you know, when I was a kid, when I was in undergraduate school, his main teacher was my main professor, not my mentor, but like the guy who oversaw the music department at my school, or the jazz department at my school, was his guy that oversaw the jazz department was Jerry Coker. That's who he learned from. Mm-hmm. And so Jerry used to talk about students that he used to have in the past, like Pat Metheny and Mike Brecker and
name dropper.
Yeah. I mean, it's the truth though. Yeah. I mean, you know, Danny Gottlieb and all those guys. And he used to talk about Metheny, and, you know, his infamous story was that, yeah, he went to school at Miami for a year and a half. Then he went on the road. Then he came back after a period of time and he was hired on staff. That hack. Right, you know, that kind of thing.
That's awesome.
No, Metheny was a bit of what I would call like a recorded mentor, maybe like a career path mentor, just from the standpoint of this was a guy that, if you look at his recorded body of work, man, he did everything, man. I mean, you know, we know him primarily, or first off, from like being the guy that started the Pat Metheny group, and he gave you that ECM, that floaty kind of a fusion style. Man, let me tell you, anybody who thinks that is some Kenny G style fluff, man, you need to get your head out of your butt, man. Because I mean, it is some seriously meaty stuff. I mean, he is chiefly responsible for creating a completely different style of music. I mean, and I'm being serious along the lines of like a Miles Davis kind of a thing, that he took a certain style of music and just completely heard it differently and went a totally different way. And then as soon as you thought, well, yeah, he's going to play the pretty stuff, then he starts recording with Dewey Redman and Brecker,
Ornette,
and Jack DeJohnette, and then Ornette, and he starts playing completely and totally free, right? And then the next thing you know, he's doing a movie soundtrack. Falcon and the Snowman, everybody. Go watch it. You know? So here's a guy that had a direct contact that was, you know, 1 degree of separation from my teacher, that just showed you that you could do a whole bunch of different things and do it all really, really well. You know? I mean, what a great example. And the guy doesn't know me from Adam. Although I did meet him once.
Yeah, man, I can totally appreciate that. I think with the Porcaro thing for me was, you know, I got pretty obsessed with him and dug in as deep as I could. And it was a given to playing the legendary status. And, you know, he definitely had that cool demeanor with his hipster voice and all that. But the thing that resonated with me about him, above and beyond the obvious, was everybody just thought the world of him and wanted to be around him, and he was the light, and he was the person everybody looked to after a take. Is that okay? You know, and I thought, like, man, I want to be that. You know?
Yeah.
I want to. That's very appealing to me. It's above and beyond the playing. the influence as a person, and how endless stories of his encouragement and his selflessness and his humbleness and shared. He'd give you the shirt off his back, and I mean those stories don't circulate by accident, or they're not propaganda. And you certainly get enough of his insight to him that he's not trying to put that out there to get over on you. It was just who he was, and that was something that always really resonated with me above and beyond some great track. And so in that sense, I probably tried to dress and look like him more for those reasons than I keep forgetting at 96 BPM with one hand, 16th notes. I'd never be able to play that ever.
Yeah.
Amazing crap he was putting out,
Give us half a dozen podcasts with that 15-minute pad warm up, and you'll be playing it.
I don't want to play it. I want my mentor to be the legend that is unobtainable. That's why I've never worked on my technique. I don't want to be able to play that song.
That's an aspiration, actually, if you think about it. Did you?
I've met my goals, that's for sure.
Did you ever hear that story that he told? And you can find it on YouTube about the recording of Silk Degrees and his little deal that Boz Scaggs, had with him. Mm-hmm. That story is just. It's fantastic. And just the short story was that when Boz was recording Silk Degrees, Jeff and all the other guys that recorded that record, who most of them were Toto, actually ended up being Toto, they basically recorded the record for almost nothing. It was as a favor to Boz, who I think was a friend of theirs, or at least they got to know him and they liked his stuff. And Boz kind of gave him a little bit of a gentleman's handshake from the standpoint that, hey, if anything ever happens, with this record, I'm going to tighten you guys up on the back end of it, right? And it's, how many times have you and I both heard that story, about, hey, you do this for me, maybe later on I'll, hook you up on something. Well, it actually happened. Everybody knows what happened to the Silk Degrees album. It was one of those multi-platinum kind of things. And maybe a year or two after that happened, Boz Scaggs gave each one of those guys that recorded that $30,000. Now think about $30,000 in 1977. Yeah. $30,000 is nothing to sneeze at now. $30,000 in 1977 was big bucks, and Jeff Porcaro said that actually was the down payment on his house that he lived in. So that'll tell you a little bit, also something about his selflessness of doing this project for Boz for next to nothing and then getting rewarded.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he there are a lot of stories about him, with that whole, man, I'm not the guy, or you need to hook this kid up, or use my drums. I know that producer likes them, man. Just use those. Use this one less thing to trip on, Stuff like that, just endless. That's whether he knew it or not. He's influencing people with that.
Yeah. Well, guys, we hope that this topic has been beneficial to you today. If you're a young musician trying to find that mentor, and if you're an older, more seasoned musician, again, becoming that mentor. It's valuable on all ends.
Rewarding too.
Absolutely rewarding. There's a few students of mine and some coworkers of mine that, I feel like that I've been able to kind of pass the torch a little bit. And I know you feel the same way.
I don't know about coworkers. They don't listen to anything I say. They listen more to what I say than what I play. But we don't have time for that grievance right now.
Well, John,
kidding.
I think
guys, kidding.
I think we wrapped that up rather nicely on
I don't know.
humorous tone.
There's about 11 people that might disagree with you.
Well, maybe they won't disagree on our little segment for the week. We're going to talk about must-have gear, right? Must-have stuff for the gig, right, John?
Yeah. It's not. This isn't going to be terribly sexy.
Is it ever? We seem to.
It can be.
I mean, it seems like we disappoint the drummers out there who hear this, and we probably thrill our other musicians, that listen to it and go, they put one over on the gearhead drummers again.
I mean, well, look, realistically, no one's going to believe me if I say, my Purple Heart segment snare drum is the greatest thing ever. You need to have one, when they know I got a Black Beauty. They're like, you're full of crap. We know that's a bunch of crap.
I got some nifty Grover triangle beaters.
It's like, no.
Yeah.
So, it's not always sexy, but man, it is essential and makes your life a lot easier. But we were talking about what are things you just can't do without, and mine's terribly obvious, but it's the best $150 or whatever it is I spent. The best investment I think I've ever made for a million reasons, and that is a rock and roller cart. And for drums, I think the bigger, the R10 and up are probably the way to go. Plenty of space. You got the bigger wheels and all that. And
is that what you've got, the R10?
I think mine's the R10. Yeah. I don't have the big wheels on the front. Yeah. Just the back, but the other, I think the 12 has them on the front.
Yeah.
Which, man, that'd be awesome too. But nonetheless, man, that thing as a working player is just beyond worth every penny. And I can't encourage you enough to have it and keep it with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you, man, regarding your cart, because I've got one also, and this is Geekdom 101. I love talking about this kind of stuff, but because everybody has a slightly different one. Is yours the one that has the pneumatic tires on the back you have to put air in? Or?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm going to make my plea to the rock and roller folks right now that are listening to this, and I'm talking about the company.
I'm crossing my fingers they'll listen.
Okay.
I know where this is going.
I've got the new one, John. Okay. Now, a lot of people would tell you that have the older one, because see, I had the older one also, and the frame I used it so much. The red and gray one. I used it so much that literally the frame broke.
I believe it.
Yeah. Okay. But so I bought a new one a few years ago, and it's the R10 one again that has the big tires on the back and fairly good sized casters on the front as well, bigger than what the old red and gray one had. Right.
Right.
But here's the issue that I've got, okay? Those new tires on the back are not pneumatic, okay? In other words, you never have to put air in them. But here's the thing, man. They are actually really hard to roll across just like a flat level, like pavement or like a tile floor or something like that. They create so much traction and have such a wide footprint that they're actually hard to roll.
Really?
Whereas opposed to now let me say this. Let me tell you where they shine. And man, you will be the envy of all your bandmates if you have to roll across grass or gravel. Oh my God, it's unbelievable. It actually rolls better on grass and gravel than it does on asphalt.
I'm just not sure I'm willing to give that up, because I rarely run across gravel or grass. So
I think the bane of the old one was if you ever had the air come out of the tires come off the actual wheel, they come off the rim, and then you're in for a world of hurt, unless you know how to put those things back on. Which
it's tough, man. I've done a couple, and I
have too.
I created new cuss words.
Yeah,
but the other thing that is a little bit annoying by those are their axle's sort of a weird size. Like, it's hard to, you can't go, like I went to Northern Tool one day and it was like, none of them fit. It was like a little custom size axle they had.
Oh, you're talking about, you tried to replace the tire, the wheels on the back.
Wheels.
Interesting.
Because I wanted to get the ones you didn't have to blow up.
Yeah. I actually would tell you to hang on to those. And as a matter of fact, I might even try, because I've still got the old one where the frame broke. I'm thinking about trying to take those off and see if I can actually put them on that new cart.
You probably
because
can.
The rest of the cart is very well built and does exactly what it needs to do. So
Man, I just used mine to move appliances the other day.
Yeah, I've done that before.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Just buy it.
So John's call is the rock and roller cart, spend the money, and be a happy boy, right?
Beyond happy.
Yeah. Well, if I haven't caused everyone, or if John's pick, I should say, hasn't caused everyone to completely and totally turn off the podcast, I'm going to achieve that now, because if John's pick couldn't get any less sexy, I am going to...
I didn't say that.
I'm telling you, I'm going to...
I just said it wasn't.
I'm going to give you the Susan Boyle of... She doesn't listen to the show, man.
She might.
We love you, Susan. But here's where I'm going to go. And it's also on the setup and load-in end of things. You need some form-fitting mechanics gloves. And I'm going to tell you why. I've torn up my hands one too many times on said rock and roller cart, because we know that the thing, it collapses and telescopes and all that good stuff. And I've gotten my fingers caught in between those things too many times and pinched and cut and all that good stuff. So I started using these really tight-fitting, form-fitting gloves, and they are fantastic. I mean, they're almost like one step away from golf gloves. You know, they're a little more husky, a little more durable than golf gloves, you know, a little thicker than golf gloves. And they work great for also when you're loading, like getting your hardware in and out of the bags, not getting your fingers caught in between the tubing and that nice little pinch that you get occasionally from time to time when they slide together. Oh, that's lovely when that happens. And then also, if you have any cymbals that have rivets in it, there's nothing better than jamming your hand down in that cymbal case or cymbal bag and just getting cut to pieces on those split rivet ends.
See, there's another good reason to just get jazz out of your life. It doesn't pay, and it cuts you up, man. Just get it out.
That could be on the back of a T-shirt. Get jazz out of your life. It doesn't pay, and it cuts you up.
We can start a store now, because we have the shut your pie hole and be the big fluffy cloud, and we can have some quote T-shirts.
Somebody I know mentioned that to me a while back.
Call him already.
All right. And then lastly,
I'm talking to him.
Oh, okay. Yeah. My phone's open. And then lastly, from a purely diva-esque point of view, it just keeps your hands clean and free of dirt, grime, and grease, because gear is nasty. It really is.
You know, any given night, your wife might be on the gig. You have to be concerned with that.
Let's just face it. I'm a fancy man.
You are. And look, man, though your pick wasn't terribly sexy, you are, Phil.
Oh, thank you, John.
Don't you forget.
Tell my wife that.
No. She's going to figure it out.
She loves it when I come at her with those nasty gloves on.
Yeah, I bet.
All right. You got anything else you want to impart on these wise folks?
Christmas is coming up soon.
That's assuming that we get this posted before then.
I'll post my want list, and you fabulous, generous people can. My wish list.
You're going to put it on the YouTube page?
I don't want anything. I just want you to listen.
That's all we want for Christmas, right?
Yep.
All right, folks. Thanks again for listening in. We hope you got something out of this. As we always say, we love bringing it to you. Every Monday, there's a brand new show. We're going to get some more interviews out there to you as well. We've got a little list that we're checking it twice, right, John? We got some surprises for everybody coming up. So let us know what you like about the show. Let us know what you want to hear. You can always reach out to us. You can catch us at our email address, drummersweeklygroovecast@gmail.com. Catch us at Facebook, facebook.com/drummersweeklygroovecast, and always on Twitter at DWGroovecast. Subscribe to us, iTunes, Google Play Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbean, any of your favorite apps. If you cannot find us, it's your fault. I said
not difficult.
It's not difficult. We're out there. So join us every Monday, folks. We appreciate you to no end. John, tell them you love them.
I love you. Thanks, friends.
Love you guys. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Circus tent. Ha! Those were the days.